This video will explain the primary facts and holdings of the High Court case Coco and A.N. Clarke. This case concerns itself with the issue of disclosing confidential information and the breach of that information by the defendant. It was found by Justice McGarry that some of the facts in Coco and A.N. Clarke raise questions in regards to the equitable doctrine of confidential communication. The plaintiff's case began when Coco entered into negotiations with A.N. Clarke regarding the design and development of a proposed Coco moped. Discussions over 3 months between Coco and A.N. Clarke involved the plaintiff supplying important information such as a list containing possible suppliers. The breach of A.N. Clarke arose when the defendant advised the plaintiff they had elected to remove themselves from negotiations and instead begin development on their own moped design. After the initial breach, Coco became wary of A.N. Clarke's reassurance of a new design when advertisements in trade papers became available, resulting in the allegation that the scamp moped had been made using the original design for the Coco moped. As the defendant provided no compensation for his alleged use of the design, Coco applied for an interlocutory injunction to terminate the manufacturing or selling of any scamp moped that had used the information provided by Coco in confidence solely for the purpose of a joint venture. In order to succeed on a motion for interlocutory injunction, Coco had to show a strong prima facie case for the existence of a right and that the defendant had in fact infringed upon this right. McGarry based his findings on the 3 elements for a breach of confidence, established by Lord Green in Saltman Engineering Co. Limited and Campbell Engineering Co. Limited, that A. The information must have the necessary quality of confidence about it, B. It must have been imparted in circumstances importing an obligation of confidence, and C. There must be an unauthorized use of that information to the detriment of the party communicating it. It was held by Justice McGarry that the plaintiff had only established the second element of a breach of confidence. As there was no contractual agreement between Coco and A.N. Clarke, it was difficult to determine whether the information was in fact confidential in nature. Furthermore, it was found that Coco had failed to establish substantial similarities between the 2 designs that could have indicated the defendant's moped was created using the original design or information Coco provided. In order to establish the second element, Justice McGarry used the reasonable persons test, applied by Justice Thomas in the Argyll case, to say that in circumstances such that any reasonable man standing in the shoes of the recipient of the information would have realized that upon reasonable grounds the information was being given to him in confidence, then this should suffice to impose upon him the equitable obligation of confidence. McGarry continued that information of a commercial or industrial value given on a business-like basis, including a joint venture or the manufacturing of products by one party for another, would therefore regard the recipient as carrying a heavy burden if he seeks to repel a contention that he was bound by an obligation of confidence. Lastly, in regards to Coco's application for an interlocutory injunction, Justice McGarry found that this was an inappropriate action as there was no cross-examination of witnesses and a charge of fraud would be inappropriate based on the affidavit evidence. Overall, it was held by McGarry that while there may have been a duty of confidence, there was no substantial evidence to support the plaintiff's claim that the scamp moped was developed using Coco's original design.